As a kid growing up in the 60s and 70s, my first exposure to the paranormal was seeing photos of Patty from the Patterson-Gimlin film in my dad's copy of Argosy magazine. I was instantly hooked. From that point forward, it's been ghosts, UFOs, and of course Sasquatch. I have, however, always compartmentalized each phenomenon into its own little box. So what do you do when one phenomenon bleeds over to the other? You may just want to ignore the data, or you can analyze it. In this video, I would like to discuss the UFO-Sasquatch connection. When I was interviewing people during my UFO days back in the 90s, two witness accounts with a Sasquatch aspect stuck out. If you know anything about alien abduction, you understand that there is no safe place for abductees. Anytime, anywhere. At the dealership I worked at, I was chided as the UFO guy. No big deal. It's been like that as long as I can remember. One day a coworker approached me with an almost unbelievable story, even for me. His daughter told him something that had him unnerved and he didn't know how to handle the information. He thought I might have some insight. I asked if he would talk to her about granting me an interview. She said yes. I met with her the next evening. They lived on the second floor of an apartment in the heart of Murray City. Murray Park was close by and you could see the Wasatch Front Mountains from the balcony facing east. On the evening in question, my coworker and his wife sat on the balcony. The kids had been put to bed and it was time to unwind. It was a warm early fall night and the cooler air felt nice after a hot day. Out over the mountain, they noticed a bright light slowly moving back and forth and hovering before it changed direction. Like any of us, he just thought helicopter. The two of them watched for a few minutes. The next thing he remembered was getting up for work in the morning, but he had no recollection of going to bed. At the breakfast table, his daughter told him of her waking nightmare. At some point in the early morning, she had been awakened to find several beings standing around her bed looking at her. A tall one at the foot of the bed, and two smaller ones to the side of her. The door was open and the hallway light was on. Standing just outside in the hall was a man in uniform with a rifle, as if on guard. She could see her parents standing at the far end of the hall. They looked like they were in a trance. But just inside the room and standing in the shadows, she saw a large figure, whose head seemed to not quite touch the ceiling. It reminded her of Chewbacca, only wider and bulkier. The last thing she remembered was the piercing red eyes staring at her. The next account I would like to relate to you occurred in the area around Hoyt Peak in Utah, in the lower Uinta Mountains. A man I will call Bill and his hunting partner Tom had set up camp on the mountain ridge overlooking a valley at the base of Hoyt Peak. The peak could be seen out across from them. Nightfall came and it was time to retire. At some point in the early morning, Bill heard the call of nature and left the tent to relieve himself. As he looked out over the valley, he saw a rectangular light shine on the mountain across from him. It was as though a large garage door had opened up below his location, and the light from inside was shining outward onto the mountain. 5 or 6 red orbs flew out of the doorway, and the bright light went dark, as if the opening was shut. He watched in fascination as the orbs moved swiftly around the valley below. They darted and danced around, then would come together in a wheel formation and spin around for a moment, then shoot out to various locations in the valley. He watched this curious display for some time. Suddenly there was a loud roar like nothing he'd ever heard before. The red light stopped in their tracks and all of them converged on a single location. "They look like a swarm of bees," he said. The roaring continued. His friend Tom had been awakened by the initial roar and came out of the tent to investigate and stood next to Bill. He said it sounded like a life or death struggle. They watched in amazement as the roar became a howl, and then a scream of agony, then silence. The lights began to spin over the spot like water going down a drain. Tom broke the silence and asked Bill, "What the hell was that?" The lights suddenly went dark. Only a few moments had passed when they realized the lights were now coming towards them from their right. The lights were swinging in and around the tree trunks and getting closer. They both panicked and jumped in their truck. They raced down the dirt road to the main road that leads out of the area. The lights were much bigger now that they were close and stayed on their tail the whole way until they exited the canyon. The lights gave up chase as the two sped into the small town there. It took until the next weekend to get up the nerve to go back for their stuff. They weren't able to recover anything because the dirt road to the campsite had been dug up and was impassable. Bill speculated he had witnessed some kind of training exercise, or maybe a hunt. These stories are over 20 years old, and I've lost contact with the witnesses. I have since heard new and old accounts that are equally strange on Sasquatch Chronicles. These are credible witnesses with nothing to gain by telling their accounts. So what can we speculate from these stories? Is Sasquatch an extraterrestrial? Or just caught up in a phenomenon like we are? I have and will continue to speculate on the possibilities. The UFO and Sasquatch communities hold their collective breaths for answers and disclosure from the government. Do you really think even then we will get the truth? Take a breath. You're turning blue. Thanks for watching.